Hey everybody, so the Ogre update has released for Age of Wonders 4. The Ogre update is the giant free update that's coming alongside the Giant Kings expansion. The Giant Kings expansion is only the DLC content, and the Ogre update is all the patch notes, all the free content that's coming into that. The Ogre update is now an open beta, which means you can go get it right now. You can leave feedback, but you can play on it if you want. If you want to do that, right click on Age of Wonders, go to properties, go to betas, and go to Ogre beta. I've read through this a few times, so I'm just going to tell you all what each of this means, because this is a very, very large, very, very free update that is very, very cool, and will definitely probably make Age of Wonders 4 a lot more interesting for a lot of you. So, as always, I kind of do Age of Wonders 4 videos as a sort of a podcast or discussion piece. So, if you want to just put me on your TV, or if you just want to listen along, you don't have to manually watch, but do make sure to like, do make sure to subscribe, and as always, leave a comment below on your thoughts on this. So, the highlights of this are the visual improvements to the map, but the most important are the underground. The underground has been split into 3 distinct themes: underground, lava caves, and ice caves. The important bit here is the underground is the old underground, where it's just rocks and dirt. No longer will the entire underground just be rocks and dirt, but you will get ice caves and lava caves. I don't believe these debuff you if you don't have the adaptation for that, but it will visually improve things. And if you do have an adaptation to like ice caves, if you get bonuses from ice terrain, or you can terraform into ice terrain, this allows you to go like underground ice or underground desolate. The lava cave isn't just a giant lava cave, it's more of like desolate terrain that happens to have a lot of lava that could be a lava lake. So if you're doing more of like a primal build, like I don't know, primal ice, and then you also go, well, I don't think primal ice can go underground, but if you are primal ice and then you go underground, it gives you a bit more options to do stuff. Okay, for combat maps, I'm sure everyone's seen the combat map where it's a rock, pass, rock, and, that map plays a lot. It's kind of annoying, but they're adding 8 new combat maps. For nature, when engaging in a battle, let me try that again. When engaging in battle, the game will randomly pick from the available maps. So if you're natural rocky, there's a new map, natural grasslands is a new map, natural forest is a new map, and then the nodes themselves have new maps for pasture, gold, mana, iron, and fish. There's also location maps, although I think this is more than 8. I think originally there's only going to be 8, now there's more than 8. So they have small, large monster infestation and great bird nest maps and beacon of unity. That's at least location maps. Don't take my word for it. Anyway, Ancient Wonders, I'm sure any of you guys who've watched me play multiplayer or even play single player, it's kind of easy to memorize the wonders and what events will happen from it. So now any wonder that did not have 3 or more adventure sets will receive a new quest. That's the Fairy Court, the Silver Realm, the Wand, the Sleeper in Shadow, Order of the Glutton, Thundered Timber, Forlorn Puppeteer, and Primal Materia. These are all new. These will ensure that each of the wonders have at least 3 quests in them. That's also a good thing. Okay. This one is a bit complicated, so I'll just read what they're saying on it. We've added more tools to realm creation for you to be able to create the experience you want, whether these are jungle realms filled with furry forms or your typical Tolkien-esque story. Changes to realm content will be saved to the realm. If you do choose to do so, while game settings will be remembered for single and multiplayer separately. More specifically then, implemented faction filtering. These settings can be found in the new realm content tab in the advanced settings. You can now control which forms appear on a realm during realm creation. These affects rulers, free cities, infestations, and inhabitants. You can now control which cultures are allowed to be used by players in free cities. You can now control the desired presence of god your origins. So if you want to play a map and you don't want a lot of stupid stuff, like you don't want to be playing an ice map and then someone chooses, I don't know, desolate, and they start terraforming everything to lava, and you're like, no, my ice story, you can choose to do that. If you want to do more typical forms, you don't want the more weird outlandish ones, you can choose to do that too. This is good for players who want that, because if you play through this game a lot, and particularly if you're playing single player a lot, you might get annoyed that you can't really have like a themed adventure. Okay, faction creation updates. You can now adjust your horses, but only horse mounts, only the generic horse mounts. The generic horse mounts have different models for them right now. There's a bunch of them, probably around 10. These visuals are variable to the default horse mount and can be adjusted separately for rulers and army units. So basically you can have your ruler on one kind of horse and your army on a different kind of horse. Okay. You can now override the voice of any faction you create, which is pretty, I mean, yeah, sure. Not that big a deal, but sure. Added a lighting button. When many of you guys were creating your forms for your factions, you were probably unsatisfied because they came out looking a little bit differently than they were when you were like making them. Yeah, you can now choose what kind of lighting they appear in when you're making them, so you can have the colors and things actually how they'll look in game. Okay, you can now choose the body shape, so you can have mini orcs, tall goblins, skinny dwarves, tall skinny dwarves, tall fat dwarves. You can do any of this stuff. It's pretty cool. It allows a lot more customization for you guys. You can also choose head size and hand size. So yes, you can have tall, skinny, big-headed, big-handed dwarves. You can have dwarves taller than elves. I assure you, this is now possible. There are more primary colors, more primary army colors, and 6 more base in-game banners, which are pretty cool. So for the Pantheon, and this is pretty cool, there are more things coming out for the Pantheon, 13 more in fact. The Cavern Bear mount, the Crystal Runner mount, you have 6 more starting hero loadouts that you can get, the Magma Orb, Gold Seeker Pickaxe, Giant Slayer Spear, Titan's Great Bow, Letherite Orbs, Shatter Blades. Some of these are better than others. I've looked at them. I don't think it's really going to break the meta. They haven't really added any like groundbreakingly OP ones, but you know, I've said that before and been wrong. 4 new banners, so if you want more customization on that, and the new society trait, Subterranean Society. This is a big one. This allows all underground, if you, with Subterranean Society, you will automatically start underground, allowing you to take this without having one of your racial traits be picked, and then while you are underground, each of those underground cities get 20% more food. All the passageways you control generate 2 Imperium, only 2, and the passageways are between the underground and the overground, just to be specific. So if you control 2 of those, you get 4 Imperium, not a big deal. The big thing of this trait is every single time you excavate a area, you have a chance, and it's a very large chance, like 95% chance. It's a very large chance to get 2 resource nodes instead of 1. That means you can get 2 mana, or an iron and a gold, or a gold and a mana, or food and I don't even know. You can get 2 nodes. It's very powerful. It allows underground cities to become very, 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 very powerful. It makes the underground starts a lot better. Okay, there's also a big list of underground changes later on, so this is going to help out the underground a lot. And this is coming in the free update. You can do this right now. I just want to double down on that. Miscellaneous trait slots for realm creation have been increased to 8. I saw some people complaining that you only had 4 realm traits. You can now do 8 if you want to do a truly bizarre realm start because you've played everything and you're just bored with the game. In addition, you now get 3 new miscellaneous traits. You get Surface Start, Unearthed Realmed, and Subdued Infestation. Surface Start forces everyone to start on the surface, completely negating any race that started underground. This can be for you who are annoyed at people starting underground or anything like that. The Unearthed Realm, this is very good. If I don't know, you don't want to dig. I don't really know. Subdued Infestations reduces the amount of infestations. So this is pretty cool. This might be very good in multiplayer in particular if you don't want people starting underground and you just want to like add this to the realm trait to just kind of like stop people from starting underground, or if you're just playing single player and you're annoyed once again at people starting underground. It's just a nice thing. As for these 2, they're okay as well. Subdued Infestations is nice because some people liked infestations but they didn't like that many infestations, but there have been some changes to that. The feudal update, I might have to do a video or something on this later. It's a very, 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 very large update to feudal. Going to be a bit difficult to go over it just in the patch notes, but the general gist here is feudal's been split into 2 different categories. There's now monarchy and aristocracy. instead of upgrading your little pikeman dude to a defender, you now, defender's been shuffled down to tier 1. He lost a little bit of stats. He's not the best tier 1 shielder ever, but he's not the worst. I put him firmly around average, maybe a little bit above average. He's a pretty good tier 1 shield unit. Now, if you do get him to legendary rank, and you have a tier 3 city, he will now upgrade to the new Liege Guard unit. Now, the new Liege Guard unit, they have this here? Okay. I have this in aristocracy. Okay, here we go. Liege Guard. Liege Guard is the new unit that your defenders will upgrade to if you're a aristocracy. So tier 1 unit promotes all the way to tier 3. Pretty good right there. It's an optional mounted unit. Defender is optional mounted. So feudal can do a very, very heavy cavalry based faction. They're just a generic tier 3 shield unit. They're pretty good for a generic tier 3 shield unit. They have above average resistance. They still have that heavy shield modifier. So unless you flank them, they get an armor and a resistance. They're very tanky, and their special ability is Sworn Bond. They can link to a friendly hero, and once they're linked to that hero, they take 50% damage from the damage link, while again, all the damage that that hero takes is being shuffled to them. So all the damage that hero takes is shuffled to the Liege Guard at 50% damage. Quite powerful. And then at the start of each turn, the linked unit gets strengthened, which is pretty good. So the Liege Guard is a pretty effective tier 3 shield unit. I would actually say like the Bastion is like the Industrious Bastion is like the end be all greatest tier 3 shield unit. I would actually argue the Liege Guard might be better. Instead of 12 damage from the Bastion, he has 14, so that's pretty good. He's just very tanky, allows you to keep your lords alive. So if you have a mage lord or a ranger lord or something like that, you can do a setup where you've got a Liege Guard or two that will stop any enemy from being able to target you down. Just very, very good unit to sit a couple on the front line. Very, very, very tanky. Now, if you decide to play, on the other hand, feudal monarchy, you upgrade your tier 1 archer to a tier 3 longbowman. Yes, that's right. So if you play monarchy, you upgrade tier 1 to tier 3. If you play aristocracy, you upgrade tier 1 to tier 3. No more tier 1 to tier 2. You get legendary rank and you become normal rank, but you become normal rank at tier 3. So it's actually worth it now to do this. Now, longbowmen, now these can be built at the city. Tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 units can be built at the city, just not the tier 4 unit. Okay, so for feudal, the tier 3 longbowmen is a very powerful archer, maybe the most powerful in the game right now, in fact. It gets a full action, always hit range 6 shot. That counts as a base attack, so it gets all those enchantments, and it always gets +1 range. So actually this is 7 range. I don't know why they worded it like that, but they did. So your full action, always hit range 7 shot is very good for picking out enemies, and your normal attacks have 5 range. So the feudal monarchy longbowman is a quite powerful archer. Once again, potentially, it's not mounted, which definitely does give it a drawback. It's not mounted, but it's very, very, very powerful. Now, what both lines of feudal get, and I'm not going to talk about the individual stuff, is the knight. The aspirant knight is a tier 2 knight. It's not very tanky. It's just an average tier 2 unit. It's actually kind of easy to kill, but it does a lot of damage. It does less damage if the target it's hitting is next to one of its allies, but it will still deal a lot of damage even if they are next to their ally. But if you actually sit in a formation, the aspirant knight will deal significantly less damage, but if you're out alone, it will hit you really, really, really hard. If you get that thing to legendary, it upgrades to a tier 4 knight. That's right. You cannot build the tier 4 knight, but you can upgrade to it. They do specify here not recruitable. This is a very, very deadly tier 4 unit. It is Giant Slayer, so any large units it gets bonus damage against, so any other mounted units or large units, anything like that. It also has Inspiring Killer and Graceful Charge, so every time it attacks it gets a stack of grace, which heals for 10 the first time it gets hit. So this tier 4 knight Now, he is tanky. He is a tanky tier 4 unit, and maybe not as tanky as like the Pyre Templar, but he's still tanky in his own right, right? Like, he is a tier 4 unit. He gets tier 4 stats. This unit with Graceful Charge, with Inspiring Killer, Giant Slayer, just very, very, very powerful knight. On paper, you don't really appreciate how strong he is, but he also, you can't recruit him. You have to upgrade into him, which as the game progresses, it can be harder and harder to find time to go upgrade as more of the map gets cleared. Okay. Now, feudal monarchy, this is more of the, this is kind of like the, I'm going to call it the easy mode feudal. Its thing is just you play around your king, and if you play around your king, you get buffed. Okay, so as I say here, units gain a powerful boost when in combat in their own domain or alongside their ruler. So if you're in their own domain, so you're defending or you're alongside your ruler, you get 1 defense, 1 resistance, 10% more damage, and 10 more morale. So these are some pretty powerful buffs that you just get for free. In addition, you get a unique building line here. So instead of the workshop, you get the militia barracks, which is production, draft, and stability. So it's stability. This is a factional building. You just get that for free, or I should say cultural building. So you just get that stability for free, 5 stability for free. This replaces the blacksmith, 20 draft income, plus 1 rank for tier 1 units, and 10 stability. Once again, you might notice that 10 stability comes for free. So if you were to get a blacksmith in a city, a feudal monarchy one would just get 15 more stability. Pretty decent so far as a cultural building is. Then there's another last unique building that all feudal monarchies will get. It's actually kind of it's decent as well. If you are tier 3, while this city's domain connects to the throne city, gain 10 stability, 10 food income, 20 food. It's not as good, but it's okay. Basically, if you have a city and it connects to the throne city, then you can build this building and you get stability, gold income, and food. It's not amazing, but you know, it's an extra free building you can get at tier 3. It's not bad at all. So feudal monarchy, it's the more basic one. You just get free stuff, which is good for new players to just get free stuff. I think players overall just like getting free stuff. And there's also, okay, yes, passive monarch summit. While army leader, all units in the army for the monarch have no unit upkeep. So now there is a 50% upkeep cap in the game. You will always have to pay 50% upkeep. I'm wondering if this bypasses it because it says has no upkeep, not minus 100%, not minus 500%. It just says has no upkeep. So in feudal monarchy, while army leader, so basically while the monarch, the lord, your leader of the faction is army leader, all units in that army have no upkeep. So it's up to 5 units have no upkeep. You guys have to tell me in game if that means literally no upkeep or does it just hit the minus 50% cap. Okay, feudal aristocracy is the way more complicated one that I probably have to make my own video on, but basically the general idea, all of this means whenever you build a city, you assign a governor to that city. When you assign a governor to a city, it becomes a liege lord. Okay, now that means you're starting your main cities. The liege lord of that city is your main faction leader, right? Okay. While a unit is in an army with its liege lord, it is minus 10% upkeep, 5 world map regeneration, and that bonus scales with renown power. So if you have 4 renown, that's a little thing. So like if you have privateer or defender, the ambitions, right, give you renown. So if you have renown level 4, the units in your army have minus 40% upkeep, 20 world map regeneration. Units also gain XP whenever the liege lord gains renown, which is debatably quite powerful. And then while you're in combat, you activate for the liege, which okay, we have it down here. Per level of renown, units in their army get 10 health regen, or say 10 health, so 10, 20, 30, 40 health, and then 5, 10, 15, 20 morale. That's quite powerful. Obviously, it scales up pretty hard. Now, I do want to notice with this aristocracy thing that your starting lord's army, he's going to probably get to renown level 4, and he's going to have a very powerful army that heals a lot. Everyone else, they're going to have to get a new city. They're gonna have to build units from that new city. They're gonna have to get their own renown. So while this seems quite powerful on paper, do remember your second, then your third, then your fourth, then your fifth hero. They're only going to be sitting at renown level 1 or 2. Maybe they'll cap out a little bit later in the game, but they're not going to start with it capped out. You can also, the cities have a flag, or sorry, the cities build units, and those units will get like a little flag on them. And then those units with a little flag on them will only get this buff if they're sent to the liege of that city. So you cannot just build only tier 4 units from your main city and then send them off to other armies. They will get no buff. You have to either directly summon onto a lord, or you have to build from that lord's city to get them to have the little flag of your lord itself. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is a very powerful faction at game start, but as the game moves on, feudal aristocracy will get a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker, a little bit weaker. But yeah, this is a very, very powerful early game culture. They do start falling off a little bit, but later in the game, they should be able to pull it back. Now, what is there then unique buildings here? Okay, so the storehouse gives 10 food, 5 draft income, so you can build the food building to your city and get draft. And the granary gets 20 food, 10 draft. So this faction, feudal aristocracy, just directly buffs the food buildings and makes them give draft, which can be pretty decently powerful. Not too bad at any rate. And then at tier 3, you get the Lord's Manor. This is another unique building that feudal aristocracy can get. So feudal monarchy and feudal aristocracy each have their own unique buildings. You can't build both, you choose which one you get. So this one, for each level of renown the governor has, the liege lord, you get 10 food, 10 draft, 5 stability. So on your throne city, this will be a tier 3 building that gets 40 food, 40 draft, 20 stability. On your other ones, it'll be significantly weaker because they're not going to have level 4 renown right as you get them. But at any rate, this will definitely be pretty decent for your capital. 40 draft gets harder and harder to get as the game goes on. So being able to draft out those tier 4 units, maybe to replace in your army because they died, or just to get them out for the first time, very powerful. Also, the stability means you might not have to go with any stability from tomes. You might be able to just, gap that out. So the giant feudal update, very, very big, very, very interesting. Now we have a siege update. This is a complete rework to sieges. So that's, yeah. Another very large update coming out of this expansion. So we've got the feudal update, more maps, some more wonder events, stuff like that. I want to mention this because I think the company, whoever makes this game, I know it's not Paradox. Paradox publishes it, but they don't develop. Triumph, I think, maybe. I can just look this up. I don't know why I'm not just looking it up. Triumph, yeah, okay. So Triumph has kind of undersold this expansion, and I just want to double down. There's a very, very large expansion, okay? So sieges have been completely reworked. Basically, the way it works, and I'm going to say this off the top of my head because there's a lot of updates here. The way it works right now in live is that if you attack people sieging your city, you just start a regular field battle. Well, now if any unit within a city attacks someone who's sieging this city, you will now start a siege battle. This means if you build very powerful fortifications and anything like that, and you start the siege battle, they are now attacking into your city. Even if you started the sally out, or whatever you want to call it, right? So this makes actually building powerful defenses quite good, as defending these cities becomes way, way, way more powerful. Now, of course, you can attack outside the city, and that starts a normal feud battle, but the person attacking the city, they don't get the choice. They're either going to sit there and siege a city down and take it, or they're going to sit there and then do a siege battle. So this gives the defender a little bit more choice on how to handle things. If they haven't built good defenses, then they can take the field battle. If they have built good defenses, then they can take the siege battle. Okay, now to make up for making the defender way more powerful in this situation, almost all fortification health has been removed from buildings. I assure you, this is still quite powerful, but I'll have to explain all this. So the city under siege penalty now only reduces food income by 50%, not 100%, so you can continue to maintain yourself while being sieged for a little bit. The ambition defender, they do notice here, the defender ambition now only requires 40 fortification from 100, so, it's actually achievable. And in particular, this does make the defender ambition a lot stronger because all you need is stone walls. Okay. So siege projects, I'm not going to read through all of them, but the general idea is that the fortification from siege projects is pretty much all gone, but the siege projects are way more powerful. So just to give you some examples here, headlong assault. Well, this is actually nerfed. Headlong assault, now besieging units also get exhausted at the start of siege combat. But if we look at construct onagers, the cost is reduced from 250 to 200, but it no longer does fortification damage. Undermine walls no longer creates additional wall breaches, but now all wall obstacles start damage and 25% are destroyed at the start of combat. So if you take the siege project Undermine Walls, you break a lot more walls, and all of the ones that aren't broken are now more damaged. Tower Bombardment no longer destroys half of the tower units at the start of combat, but now a random tower unit is struck for 20 damage at the start of combat, and then it repeats 4 times. So this is going to be good. There is one other change I did read here. Outposts can no longer go from palisade to stone walls. They're now locked on palisade, so outposts can no longer have stone walls and take like 20 years to siege. That's definitely a good change. There is they'll talk about that in fortification structures. Okay, so Ritual of Calamity no longer removes all towers and battlements, which is good. Ritual of Calamity just removed all towers, all battlements, made it impossible to defend against. For a siege project, I know siege projects I've always said aren't very powerful, but this one kind of made it completely pointless to defend, which is never very good. But now every turn during the siege, a random province from the besieged city is pillaged and grants you the rewards. So if you siege a city for 4 turns, then for 4 turns, a random province will be pillaged and give you all the rewards from it being pillaged. So with Ritual of Calamity, you'll slowly wreck the city, even if eventually you don't take it, or they try to defend it and you back off, anything like that. That's generally how this is all going to go. I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me read, one more. Dragon Attack. Increased costs from 60 mana to 100 mana, but at the start of combat, 75% of battlement positions are set on fire for 3 turns. So, as you can see here, the general idea, siege projects are way more powerful, but do not give you the ability to break the walls quicker. So, how then are defenders better in this? Okay, how are defenders actually going to be defending better? Well, if we read through some of these changes here, we can see that, yes, defenders actually get a lot of strength there. All tower units are now player controlled and no longer fire automatically. So you can now play the towers yourself, target down enemies, kill them in time. Even if you do end up losing the siege, you can make sure that you get more kills in the siege and that you don't just leave a lot of units at low HP. This is very good and also gives you a lot more control of the battle. Stone walls lowered fortification health from 40 to 30, but their gold and production was reduced substantially from 170 gold and 450 production to 85 gold, 200 production. So you can get stone cities up on Well, you can get stone walls up on cities quite easier, especially on those newer cities that don't have as much production. So getting to stone walls will now be something people will do way, way more often instead of just ignoring it, because 450 production is just not something you can really spare your time doing. Okay. Ballista towers are buffed rather significantly. Instead of giving you 10 fortification health, they give you 0. Okay, do you all get the theme here? So I'm not going to mention that anymore. You all get the theme. No more fortification health from any of these. But ballista towers now have 60 health instead of 35, and their unit damage was increased from 20 to 30. So each of these ballista towers are now doing 30 health with 60 HP, and you can player control them, making them way better. Catapults went from 15 damage to 20. Archer battlements no longer give you that 5 fortification, which I said I would stop mentioning, but I just want to mention this because some people have said this change is actually too strong, but I think it's actually cool. When you stand in an archer battlement, you also now get 40% more accuracy. That also applies to the arcane battlements, meaning you ignore the obscured targets, you get +1 range, and you get plus 40% accuracy. So you can have archers shooting at max range at 100% accuracy, just nailing people. So archer battlements make it way more possible to defend cities, especially with a couple archers in the back. Maybe not when your enemies have dragons and will just fly up to you, but, Caltrop stash, it's a little bit interesting. I'm not going to go through that. If you want to read that, that's fine. It takes too long to go through. There's a bunch of changes here, I'm not going to go through all of them. Let me read. What's an interesting one? Fortress of Vines. Okay, so Fortress of Vines was notorious because Fortress of Vines gave you like 200 fortification health. It made your cities, effectively, you could literally win an expansion victory before your enemies could siege through even one city. It was probably not as fun as you're hoping. It was quite lame. But now what it does, in addition to its other base effects, not only gives fortification health, not only gives fortification health per forest or mushroom feature, so your cities are now normal and siegeable, but all enemy units in your domain have their movement speed lowered to 32. 32. That is the base foot walking speed. If you're a dragon, you're slowed to 32. If you're a super cavalry, slowed to 32. If you're a very fast race, you're slowed to 32. Fortress of Vine, it makes it so if you are Fortress of Vine, you are not going to be ran down. Enemies will not reach you. So at any rate, this fortification change and this siege change, I'm actually looking forward to this. This is really cool. The entirety of this siege change. We should hopefully see more siege battles, definitely in multiplayer, as more people actually build defenses in dangerous locations, but at the very least in single player, you guys will very likely be able to build giant giga cities and obliterate the AI as they come to you. Yeah, so this is cool. This is very cool. I like this. This is really cool. Lava. Okay, lava is now colonizable. Who can colonize lava? Okay. They show that later. Okay. Anyway, who can walk on lava? Anyone with signs of flame can now walk on lava. Infernal fiends, giants, gold golem, roving furnace, ironclad, and severing golems can all now walk on lava. You can now build lava roads. Units that can fly, float, and or can walk on lava can now build lava roads on lava hexes. Non-lava walking units can now walk on lava roads. Okay. And annexing lava provinces will generate lava roads. So you can now colonize lava, you can push out over onto it. And for those of you wondering, yeah, there is lava above ground. It's not all below ground. Not that much above ground. It's all in desolate terrain, but there are a couple up there. It's kind of unnoticeable if you're not looking for it, but yeah, there are a couple up there. You get negative 15 stability for annexing lava and an additional -5 for the actual improvement on the lava. So you get negative 20 city stability for annexing lava. You can either do a mine or a conduit. That's gold or mana, so you don't get any choice. Only mines for gold, only conduits for mana. Okay. Now, cities inhabited by races with demonkin or signs of flame ignore the city's stability penalty. Cities inhabited by races with underground adaptation, desolate adaptation, primal tunneling spider, or praman ashen sabertooth also ignore the city stability. So if you transform into demons, you can settle lava. If you get signs of flame, you can settle lava. If you do the two primals, the underground primal or the sabertooth primal, you can ignore lava. Well, you can annex lava. And then underground adaptation and desolate adaptation can both do that. Okay, and remember, primal is just, copying those. If you do annex lava, you now get a new building chain. So if you're doing mega industrious cities or anything like that, and you ever run out of cities, you can now get more by annexing lava. If you have one lava province in your city, you can build a building for 10 production. If you have 2 lavas in your city, you can get 15 mana. If you have 3 lavas in your city, you can get 20 gold. Then if you have 4 lava or above, you can now get the Pyroclastic Guild, which is probably not going to be built because everyone's just going to go with the Scholar Guild. But, you could build it. You could. You won't. In lava, you can now find new pickups, molten weapons. Molten weapons will be guarded by enemies, but will give you binding essences and fragments, which we'll talk about later. Or pyroclastic shards, which are free and unguarded and give you gold and mana. So if you can fly over lava, you could find these pyroclastic shards and get free gold and mana. Underground generation has been completely reworked. It's actually quite cool. I really like this one. I'm gonna keep saying that with this update because I really like this part of the update. In total, because there's a lot of words here. The general idea is instead of the underground being like super RNG and sometimes just giving you the worst generation to where you just quit, and sometimes giving you halfway decent generation to where you don't quit but you regret your life ever going underground. Underground now spawns giant caverns, back to back to back giant caverns for very large cities. These giant caverns, particularly the ones you start in, will have way more resources on average and be able to support cities of up to like 20, 25 population without really much of an issue. So the underground generation, and you'll find the giant cavern next to a giant cavern next to a giant cavern. So the underground's definitely gonna be way more hospitable here. So yeah. There is now a realm trait as well to kind of undo this. The explorative underground realm trait. So if you don't like this, if you don't like the underground being giant caverns next to each other, if you want to go back to the old system, you can do the explorative underground realm trait. I don't know why you would. You're basically just screwing over anyone trying to settle underground. But yeah, sure, cool. Improved placement of underground players compared to free cities on the surface. Hopefully this means, particularly if we play multiplayer, we have noticed a problem. If you play single player, you've definitely noticed this problem. Underground players have a really bad habit of spawning directly or nearly directly under other players, making it very awkward. And also when they spawn under other players, it'll be like, so like, let's say you have a 6-player layout and everything's fair, it'll like remove one of the players from the overground and put it under another player. So then there's just this giant open space between 2 players so that, you know, they can go settle into that between them and they kind of get a huge advantage. And then another player gets a huge disadvantage because they have another hostile player right under them. So hopefully the placement improvement has helped this a lot. But at any rate, yeah, I mean, increased cavern sizes, but reduced number of caverns. Caverns are generated closer together. Tunnels connecting all caverns throughout the entire underground. So no longer do you get like an underground that can't connect into the other underground. No longer do you just get an isolated underground. It's way better. You're just gonna have to trust me. Try an underground start with the new society trait. It can be powerful. I'd like to see other people play it because I'd like to see how powerful it can get. Okay. Huge update to item crafting. Well, maybe not a huge update, but let's say a bit of a rebalancing. You now need binding fragments to craft tier 3 and tier 4 items. A lot of people are complaining that by the end of the game, not even by the end of the game, by like turn 10, all you were doing was crafting tier 4 items over and over and over again. A bunch of people didn't like that. They like their tier 4, tier 3 items being a bit more rare, less common, less spammed. So to craft tier 3 and tier 4 items, you now need binding fragments. I think this is overall a good change. While this does, of course, reduce the power of the player, I think this is a good change. The item crafting was a bit screwy. I mean, you might have watched me play ever. All I did was spam tier 4 items. It kind of made things feel samey, and you didn't really have to make many choices. Now, of course, this does come with a bit of a caveat. Tier 1 items are now crafted instantly. Tier 2 items are now crafted in 1 turn. Tier 3 items are now crafted in 2 turns, and Tier 4 items are now crafted in 3 turns. So long as you actually have the ability to craft them, you can get out these Tier 1, Tier 2 items very, very, very quickly, and these Tier 3 and Tier 4 items much quicker than before. Okay, so you need these fragments to craft Tier 3, Tier 4 items, and yeah, you now get way more binding essence. You can spam out way more Tier 1, Tier 2 items, but the Tier 3, Tier 4 items are going to be much harder. The society trait Reclaimers, for those of you who are worried, Reclaimers will now also generate binding fragments. So if you want to just, if you're very interested in only spamming out Tier 4 items, all you want is Tier 4 items, you want the old way, all you want is all your heroes clad out, Reclaimers will now generate a lot more binding fragments. Well, because it didn't used to generate any binding fragments at all, right? Okay. So, hero changes. Increase the quality of equipment the AI-controlled heroes use. Early game, the AI will only use... at level 1 to 4, the AI will only use Tier 1, Tier 2 items. At 5 and 6, it will use Tier 3, Tier 4 items. There should be AI controlled heroes. Yes. Okay. So once they're level 7 to 10, they'll get tier 4 to tier 2 to tier 4 items. Numbers are hard in my head, man. And then if the AI is at 11 plus, their equipment range will be tier 3 and tier 4. So enemy AI heroes will be significantly harder. Now, you might be saying, well, if you're killing them, you're just taking all their equipment. Okay, they did make another change here. When an enemy hero is killed in combat, that player is now given that hero's best piece of equipment as a reward after the battle. The rest of the hero's equipment is removed before the hero is transferred to the crypt or prison. This does not apply to heroes that return to their owner's crypt. When killing heroes on mount, there's a chance you just get the mount. So basically what this means, to those of you who don't understand, instead of an enemy hero coming at you with a bunch of items, and you kill them, and you take all their items, and you sell them, and you just have now all these items, you smelt them all down to make tier 4 items, you not only get one item from them, you can smelt down that one item from them, but all the other items, no, can't do anything with them. Now to compensate a little bit, when you do sell a hero's corpse back, instead of 20 plus 20 gold per level, it's now 25 plus 25 gold per level. So that should basically mean farming free cities will no longer give you infinite free items. Does everybody understand that? Okay, what this whole thing means, farming free cities no longer gives you infinite free items. Additionally, enemy empires should hopefully have a little bit better items so their heroes aren't such jokes. This is all AI changes. I haven't noticed anything too wacky. I don't think so. Range units are now less likely to stand next to enemy units, even if that unit is facing a different direction. Deprioritized stunned and immobilized from the combat AI. Added a new logic to prevent the combat AI from trying to stun, freeze, immobilize an already stun, freeze, immobilized unit. Good job. Okay, so this is just a clarity change. All enchantments said like increased for attacks that only hit once, something like that. Okay, all attacks that only hit once are now changed to having a unit tag single shot. All effects that say increased for single shot will now be mentioned here. If you're increased for single shot, you're mentioned here. This should be way more clear to new players what's going on. This was a change made a while ago. They're just mentioning everything here. Okay. Units with negative armor or resistance will now take more damage from attacks. Despite a lot of players thinking it worked like this, it didn't actually work like this. In addition, sundered resistance and sundered defense now stack up to 10 times instead of 5, which is also quite good. Mind control abilities and spells no longer work on units that are berserk, routing, or insane. So that, with the exception of the final ultimatum spell. So that's also pretty good. Okay, these changes here are pretty good. Good for clarification, good for letting everyone know how the system works. And I really like this sender change because I'm going to be completely blunt with you guys. I actually thought units did take more damage when they hit negative armor or resistance. I didn't realize that they didn't. So, I swear to God, come to me a few days ago, I would have told you, of course they take more damage. And I would have been wrong. But now I'm right. So no one knows that I was wrong. Okay. As for cultures, there have been some updates to cultures to try to rebalance them a little bit. For dark, and this does not nearly help dark enough, so if anyone's listening to me, dark still sucks. Their tier 1 fighter is just way too squishy. They just get obliterated in early battles. It's really bad. But their warlock has been buffed. I would call this a buff a little bit. Yeah. So Sundering Curse from the warlock now hits 2 targets. It hits your original target, then a second target within 3 hexes. The damage has been reduced from 24 to 16, but they now get 2 stacks of Sundered Resist. Or, no, my bad. They now get 1 stack of Sundered Resist, 1 stack of Sundered Defense, and 1 stack of Weakened. So you can now apply this Weakened and Sundered Resist and Sundered Defense. You can now apply this to 2 enemies instead of just 1. It's a little bit of a buff, and it might make more sense later on. At any rate, this allows the warlock to debuff enemies for the dark culture. A little bit easier, because remember, the dark culture loves hitting people with debuffs. So being able to debuff 2 people makes a warlock a lot more usable. It's not like a huge buff, and it's not nearly enough. So, yeah. Anyway, Industrious. Industrious was not underperforming, but definitely starting to get power creeped a little bit, I would say. Industrious was more of like a mid-tier faction by this point, especially with the feudal changes. It would probably be underperforming a little bit. So they gave it a little bit of a buff, which I think is good. Okay. The arbalist, that's their tier 1 archer. The overdraw crossbow, this removes their defensive stance retaliation attack that's no longer blocked by charge resist. So you can overdraw crossbow, bam, shoot that into a pikeman, and it will still remove their defensive stance. So that's quite powerful. Its accuracy is now 100% instead of 90%, has 5 range instead of 4, and the unit itself gets 2 defense and 1 resist instead of 0. The arbalist will now be quite good for a tier 1 archer, quite good, possibly the best tier 1 archer in the entire game, even though he's technically a crossbowman. This should help Industrious expand a bit more early game. Industrious, I've always thought, is more of like a mid-game faction. So by giving them that stronger early game, it'll help them expand a bit more, which will kind of snowball into a stronger mid game. It also does give Industrious the ability to play more of an archer early game instead of relying on spamming, well, non-archers. Mystic potential. Now, there were 3 mystics. Mystic was top tier, and then like mid tier. Potential wasn't bad. It was like mid tier, but like, again, once we start adding all this power creep into the game, Mystic potential probably needed a little bit of a help. How much help did it get? A lot. So we'll see what happens here. But when you exploit a spell, that spell is now on cooldown for 5 turns instead of 10. So you can double the amount of spell exploitation you do, which is really, really powerful. The world map spell Arcane Studies no longer reduces the production of a city. And the Spell Weaver, now the Spell Weaver I would say did get nerfed. He can no longer give you a second spell cast, which was probably the most powerful part of Mystic Potential. So there is a bit of a drawback here. The spell exploitation is twice as strong, but the Spell Weaver got a little bit of a nerf. It'll make a bit more sense later on, but it's like this is very buffed, and then this kind of got a little nerf. No matter what you want to say, not being able to double cast spells is a bit of a nerf. Okay, so you no longer get Weaver's Overchannel, you now get Dissonant Weave. It's a full action, 6 range, full action, 6 range. Target unit takes 16 damage, then it cascades to an enemy next to him and repeats, then next to him and repeats. So this is a very powerful spell. If the enemy is in a giant line or formation or anything like that, you can hit all of them down the line. So this update definitely wants to hit deathballing. The devs seem to have found the deathball meta and wanted to implement some counters to the deathball meta so that the deathball meta maybe didn't persist as much. For reavers, we have to buff reavers every patch because they're quite bad. Will this be enough to make them good? No, it'll probably keep them up with power creep, but I think they'll still be mid-tier. At the very least, the AI will use them better, I think. But they'll still probably be like mid-tier. It definitely helps them a lot though. And so the Harrier unit, the cast net ability can now graze, which seems more like, I mean, it's a buff, it's a bug fix buff. Mage lock is being reworked again to allow the AI to use them easier. Now, you've got fire mage lock and fire heavy, or both of them are fire heavy mage lock, but there is now the fire heavy mage lock. The base action that shoots is now 100% accuracy, but it's now a full action. So your base ability is now a full action, shoot 100% accuracy, bam. You now get snapshot, which is 80% accuracy and does a bit less range. It does a good bit less range, okay? Or sorry, range damage. Wow, my words are bad. So you can do a full action, kaboom, 100% accuracy, or a one action, boom, still a good bit of damage, but far less boom, right, at 80% accuracy. So this should allow the AI to use this unit way better because they love to reposition, and this should allow a player using this unit to not be so annoyed by having to press 2 buttons every time they shoot. Now, the hero and item mage lock equipment have also been changed to use these changes so that, yeah. Biggest buff then? Well, I mean, the biggest buff is probably the mage lock unit being able to be used by the AI a lot better because it should actually be able to understand the unit. But the overseer, this is their support unit, health increased from 60 to 70. Its heal went from 40 to 45 hit points. It enters defensive mode after healing, and it can heal if it's in an enemy zone of control. So for reavers, this is a pretty large buff overall to their units. Not to their economy or anything, but their actual fighting units, significantly better, significantly stronger. This will help them out a lot. Okay, primal tunneling spider. Tunneling spider can now have +1 annexation range. Remember, tunneling spider, primal likes to get a lot of food, and particularly underground, you could actually run out of areas to expand. So it should allow tunneling spider to be a lot better. Primal darter, his optimal range increased from 2 to 3. Their range is still 3, but their optimal range is now 3. Effectively, this reads, for those of you guys who don't understand, primal darter is now more accurate. So darters should, when controlled by the AI, they should run into melee range far less. They should not be dumb. They should be way, way, way smarter. Okay. Yeah. If nothing else, when you use them, they're going to be way more accurate. The primal spider has its movement range increased from normal to fast, and it gets poison web, which is just a web ability, but we might not believe this. Poison web. The primal saber-tooth also has its movement increased from fast to very fast. These are the summon units from it. So primal overall, I would call this another mid-tier faction. Bit of a buff on the primal darter, helps them a bit more. Not as much as the reavers got, for sure, but I would say primal was better than reavers anyway. So primal will do a little bit better. It could have used maybe a little bit more help, but reavers also could have used a little bit more help. Dark definitely could have used a lot more help. This industrious change, I think, is pretty good. We'll see what happens. I mean, changing one tier 1 unit that you might only have 1 or 2 of in the entire game isn't going to change the faction, but it will make them play a lot better. And it does mean that if Industrious gets into early game fights and has to build tier 1 units, that Arbalist will be doing a lot better. Oathsworn Strife, I did mention this in my culture video. It was very weird. Warrior Soul could literally turn off in the middle of combat. That's their bonus damage. Could literally turn off in the middle of combat if you started to outnumber and kill enemies. That was weird. Yeah, I don't really know. So units gained through events now receive special bonuses effects to make them feel more special. Cool. Added an option to the heroic preposition surrender event that allows you to imprison the hero of the stack. Add a new variation of the retreat event when armies are outnumbered. Ensures that items generated through events cannot generate ruler specific weapons anymore. Cool. These are just AI faction improvements, adjustments. AI factions will use different classes if capable, and they will use different they changed some of their throne city names, and they changed some of their classes to be interesting. They changed some of their colors as well. Overall, it's just purely aesthetic changes, but also having a bit of different classes for you to fight. And some of them got some weapon changes. Okay, form traits. This is kind of the death ball meta nerf here. Tough and resistant were both hyper, mega, ultra overpowered. Now remember, you can still use the hard to hit trait. You can still use defensive stance. You can still use you get bonus armor and defense from being in defensive mode. You can still use all of that regularly, okay? But if you only use tough and resistant because you were a lame person and not very interesting, tough now, instead of just giving +2 defense, now gives 1 armor and 1 resistance against melee attacks, and only melee attacks. Resistance, instead of giving a flat 2 resistance, now gives 1 defense and resistance against magic attacks, spells, and effects. In particular, neither of these affect ranged attacks. By a lot of people notice that ranged enemies, ranged units as a whole, just kind of got outscaled as the game went on. This helps them scale a bit better and be a bit more interesting. We were definitely in a death ball melee meta for a while. Range units should get a little bit of a help here. Now, Dread Spider mounts now also get swift, and web was changed. Instead of being a flat 16 physical damage, is now a 12 damage +4 for each unit tier. So a tier 1 unit loses 4 damage, a tier 2 unit is the same, a tier 3 unit gains 4 damage, a tier 4 unit gains 8 damage. If anyone knows how to get a tier 5 racial unit, make sure to tell me. Okay, now there's a big change here, and I don't like some of it, but let's go over it. Okay, most +1 rank effects have been removed. The devs didn't seem to like you recruiting units already at legendary rank, so most of those have been removed. Devotees of Good now, instead of pure good giving you +1 unit rank recruitment, now gives you 2 XP per turn. My opinion, way undertuned, hilariously undertuned. Not sure what to say. Chosen Destroyers was giga buffed, now grants 40 gold, mana, and knowledge income for every 3 population the raised city had with a minimum of 1. Chosen Destroyers, huge buff, massive buff, possibly an over buff, but we'll see. Chosen Destroyers definitely doing this run went from like a giga hard challenge run to potentially just being very, 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 very strong. We'll see how it goes. Probably too strong. It's a lot of knowledge. Mana Addicts no longer gives +1 rank to battle mages and support units, now gives 10 stability from mana nodes. Now that's not conduits, that's mana node. So every mana node a city has gives you 10 stability. It's okay. Battle mages, once again, I keep alluding to it, but they've got big changes going on. The Astral Trait Mana Channelers no longer gives +1 rank to magic origin units, now gives 20% more XP gain to magic origin units. So no longer do you just summon shit elementals who die with 10 more health. Now if you keep them alive, they can actually level up and rank up a bit better. Okay. Artifact Hoarders renamed Signs of Evil. Now, Signs of Evil is way, 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 way easier to proc than Devotees of Good. So I'm not sure why Signs of Evil also gets a more powerful trait. Please change this, because this just makes Signs of Evil even eviler and makes Devotees of Good even wussier. But Signs of Evil, instead of giving the +1 unit rank in pure evil, now gives a 20% discount on gold and drafts of unit. So they get 2 XP per turn, they get a 20% discount. Yeah, it's a bit one-sided. This one is also way harder to get. If like this needs to be like +4 XP. I don't know, dude. Games end after like 70 or 80 turns, 90 at most. If like you can literally reach expansion victory at that point, unless you're playing like a giga large map. So I'm not really sure. Affinity skill, Chaos Empowerment, reduced fire damage when attacks crit from 3. Oh, these are for hero skills. Okay. The Chaos Empowerment, reduced fire damage done when attacks crit from 5 to 3. So Chaos Empowerment got nerfed. There's a big one. There's a really, 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 really big one. Scattershot, True Shot, and Snapshot now are considered, I think they're now considered, yeah, they're now base tag. So they now scale up with the weapon you have. They now scale up with bonus damage you have. So Rangers eating good. Very big change for Rangers. Very big change for Rangers. This means their Snapshot scales much harder. Their Scattershot, their AoE shot scales much harder. And if you get True Shot and you just go kabam, yeah, that does a lot of damage. Warrior skill, Graceful Charge, no longer triggers from retaliation and opportunity attacks, which is another nerf for Warrior in one of the less powerful lines. So, I mean, everyone goes Berserker Warrior, nobody goes Knight, so it's, okay. Warrior skill, Cleaving Sweep and Sundering Sweep now uses a more reliable method to copy damage output of the hero's main weapon. Cool. Okay, we have a rework of the Wizard King and Eldritch Sovereign, at least a little bit. Wizard King now starts with 10 casting points, but they do not get casting points from the hero's skill. So they now just start with that. They just get that for free. Okay, and there's more buffs to Wizard King later on. Eldritch Sovereign now gets reworked a little bit. Eldritch Phase 1 now gets 4 range instead of 3, and 2 new skills. They can get +5 world map casting points and ignore +1 status resistance per point here. So there's 2 more points added to Eldritch Sovereign, which allow them to get world map. They don't get that for free. They now need to put 2 points into it. But the Eldritch Sovereign now unlocks affinity skills as it chooses signature skills. So yeah, you can now choose affinity skills for your Eldritch Sovereign. Governor traits have been added. Overall, I've looked through them. They added Trollkin Governor trait, using foresters and rivers for economy while letting the city recruit trolls and ogres as its governor gains renown. I have never seen that in my life. Huh. I guess. Huh. Obviously I haven't seen it. It's new. That's funny. The ruler's governance train is no longer replaced with ascended governor when joining as a hero after ascending to the pantheon. Okay, so I'll keep it. There's now champion governor, wizard governor, dragon governor, eldritch governor, and giant governor. We don't have giant governors yet. Okay, so I'll just go over it. Recruiting governor got nerfed. You can only get +2 rank recruitment. You can't do that. Okay. Recruiting governor now gets +1. Recruiting governor is still probably overall the best governor, mind you. He's just not like blatantly by far the best governor, and without him you're inting. So yeah, recruiting governor was a bit much. Okay. Overall, I would say eldritch is probably the best, followed by champion and wizard, followed by dragon being the worst. That's good because dragon was really overpowered. Eldritch being that good though might be a bit of an issue. Worth noting, the wizard governor gets world map casting and I think battle casting as well every single renown level he goes through, including level 1. So the wizard governor, the wizard king governor, to get level 1, 2, 3, and 4 renown will get up to 20 world map casting and 20 combat casting, which does stack with this 10 casting points it got by default. That's 30 world casting, 30 combat casting for the wizard king, instead of having to spend hero skills to get them. Quite good for the wizard king. Unfortunately, overall, his base governorship is a bit underpowered to make up for it. They're still good, but I think the Eldritch Sovereign still just eats the wizard governor. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. The champion governor, he's okay, but he's definitely a bit underpowered right now. Champion, the command skill is not nearly as good as the developers think it is. It's good, but you have to like put points into it, and then you get way weaker because you're not Eldritch or Dragon. The Wizard Governor is not Eldritch. He's still a champion, but he's not a champion wizard. It's, yeah, I mean, we'll see. They helped, like the Dragon Governor not being very good helps keep Dragon down, but now we might run into the issue where everyone just goes Eldritch, so we'll see. New infusion on the item forge. Leap can now be applied to Cestus and polearms. Retaliator was nerfed. Instead of getting 20 to 100% damage on retaliation, you now get 20 to 60%. Defensive master was nerfed. Instead of always ending in defensive stance at 3 points, you now end it always in defensive stance at 4 points. No nerf to infect, which I thought was a bit annoying. Blowpipe can no longer be equipped on mounts, but instead of quick stab, you get disengaging shot. Probably overall a nerf, but this was probably done for animation. One-handed weapon category has increased its base damage from 10 to 12, and magical orbs also got increased from damage from 10 to 12. So this should make one-handed weapons way stronger. Everyone was going two-handed on everyone, and magical orbs should be a bit stronger. We'll see if it actually does anything. Modding, multiplayer. Okay, we got some big tome updates here. And then, oh boy, we still have a lot to go through. That's this patch. This patch is so big. Oh boy. Okay, so for tomes. Tome of Amplification, Frenzied Focus. This is where your battle mages and supports get 1 stat of strengthened every time they attack. They now also get that and +1 range. Disruption Wave has been nerfed from being an automatic battle win to being still pretty good. Instead of automatically inflicting disrupted, now inflicts it at 120% base chance, which is still really good, but will be reduced, and a lot of people will now resist this. Now, instead of dispelling all debuffs and dispelling all buffs on enemies, it now only removes 2 debuffs on your units and 2 debuffs on, it only removes 2 debuffs on your units and 2 buffs on enemy units. This should make Disruption Wave way more balanced. It'll still be strong, but it won't be Giga Mega Ultra broken. Tome of Reveille, Blood Fury weapons only gives its base damage to, well, it only gives its damage to base attacks, which, okay, I guess. Tome of Evolution has been pretty significantly buffed. It now gives your entire race 5 world map regeneration, and the cap on heroes has been increased from 5 to 10. So your heroes can now cap out at +30 HP instead of +15. And as mentioned, your entire race gets 5 world map regeneration, because it does come from a tier 1 tome. That is a pretty good buff. Overall, I would say Tome of Evolution, though, is still not good, but this definitely does help it. I would say the biggest issue with Draconic Vitality is that it's a tome about dragons, but then its best buff is to your race, which is odd, but, you know, okay. Tome of Dragons itself, the Flamer Focus, this is the ability that you probably don't know because you've totally forgot it exists. Tome of Dragons does have a unit enchantment where your battle mages can get a new ability, Firebomb. Now, Firebomb, the ability you add, has been significantly buffed. The ability damage now increases with the unit tier. So tier 2, 3, and 4 battle mages will now deal way more damage with it. And the damage done to adjacent units has been increased from 50% to full, and changed from a 90% chance to inflict burning and bleeding to a guaranteed chance to inflict burning and bleeding. So this Flamer Focus might actually get used now. I'm not saying it will, but it might. Materium, Tome of Transmutation has seen a bit of a change to the Transmuter. A Transmuter now does half physical, half fire, and its basic attack now is a base 30% chance to stun. Now that's quite good, because that's a 30% chance to inflict Gilded, which is stun. That's quite good. Instead of Petrify, which was a AoE stun that did no damage, it's now an AoE Transmute. That's 12 physical, 12 fire damage in a 1 hex radius, a guaranteed sundered defense, and if successful, which it should be because it's guaranteed, all allies in a 2 hex radius around the Transmuter now get bolstered defense. So it no longer does an AoE stun with no damage, which was good in theory, but in practice was not really that good. It now does this AoE damage. Now this, of course, is to try to stop deathballing. You might be noticing a pattern here with a bunch of these changes. The devs really want you to stop deathballing. But what's interesting is the deathball is mostly done with the Pyre Templar, who has near immunity to fire damage. And both of these do fire damage. Hint, hint, dev. Remove the 6 fire resist. I know it's like a Pyre Templar, but that 6 fire resist coming out of nowhere, it shuts down way too much stuff. Anyway, Transmuter, maybe one of them in your armies now will be pretty good just for AoE buffing people. Overall, not blowing my mind, but it does give it a roll. Tome of Terramancy has been completely reworked. You now have a new unit enchantment, Leyline Focus. All battle mages and support units get 30% more damage and 2 resist until they move. So if you move, you lose this buff. If you don't move, 30% more damage and 2 resist. Quite powerful, especially if you're just sitting a couple battle mages in the back, luring your enemies into you. You can completely destroy their lines, as long as you don't do fire damage. But if you do other damage, you can completely destroy them. Very, very powerful. Okay. Combat spell Seismic Shock. Your damage has been increased from 25 to 30. Tome of Terramancy was a complete joke before this. So instead of being a complete joke, it will now be, at the very least, decent. Okay. Crushing Earth Spell. Sundered defense increased from 3 to 4. Summon Stone Spirit. So instead of summoning a tier 3 unit, you now summon a tier 4 Rock Giant. Rock Giant is way stronger than Stone Spirit, so this should help you out a good bit. The world map spell Earth Shatter. This was changed from targeting any province to targeting only provinces with mountains, stalagmites, or diggable earth. It now summons a Stone Spirit on a destroyed mountain, stalagmite, or diggable earth, but no longer deals damage. So the targeting has been reduced. The damage has been removed, but you now get a free Earth Spirit off it. Is it good? Overall, Tome of Terramancy, this does look pretty good for it. It seems Materium is going to be getting a lot of Battle Mage support. So you should be able to try to do some Battle Mage builds now. Now, Tome of the Crucible is also getting a buff. Tome of Calamity completely replaced Tome of the Crucible, which it seems the devs have noticed, and Tome of the Crucible is now getting a bit of support to keep it up with Tome of Calamity, so that it's not just DLC creep. The devs, I mean, to their credit, like, I'm gonna give them a lot of credit right now. The devs seem to very much not be intentionally doing DLC creep. It does happen just because that's literally how life works, but they are going back and adjusting a lot of these so they're not just, here's Tome of Calamity, it's Crucible, but better, you know what I mean? Okay, Meteor Arrows has been changed to Meteor Projectiles. It now buffs battle mages and support units and range units and skirmisher units. Okay, so that's because Calamity Projectiles was literally better in every way because it affected more unit types. So now Meteor Projectiles was changed to just keep up with the DLC power creep. But this does mean Tome of the Crucible will buff battle mages and supports so that they AoE on their base attacks, hit more people, should be way better in fire damage, so it won't affect Pyro Templars. There's now the combat spell Meteor Shower. Okay, now this one was a bit screwy. The main way to tell people is it hit enemies or allies at random. Yeah, it's okay. There's a lot of text here. Okay, so the damage was reduced. Instead of 30 physical fire, it's now 20 physical fire. So not 20 physical and 20 fire, but 20 combined physical fire. The duration was increased from 3 turns to 5 turns, so you can cast it at the start of the battle and be hitting the whole battle. It does not target hexes adjacent to enemy units. It now targets directly on top of enemy units. I'm not sure why to target it adjacent, but anyway. Change from damaging all units in a 1 hex radius to only damaging enemy units in a 1 hex radius. And its combat casting was reduced from 200 mana, 65 casting, to 150 mana, 50 casting. Overall, Meteor Shower, you should be able to just put this on early in a battle. You shouldn't be worried anymore about it hitting your own units because it hit an enemy, which then hit your unit. In addition, it should target directly over enemies, so if they're deathballing, it hits them a little bit harder, and because it lasts for longer, it'll keep hitting them for a bit longer. But it did lose 30% of its damage, so that's not great. Unfortunately, it's still half fire damage, so it doesn't hit Pyro Templars. Okay, Tome of the Creator. Now, this one is a large change. This is a tier 5 tome. The Eternal Earth unit enchantment used to give all elementals Undying. It now gives all elementals and constructs natural regeneration. That's 10 world map healing per turn or 10% of their health per turn in battle. So that's a pretty good one right there, natural regeneration. And it gives them 10 hit points and it gives them 2 lightning resist. So yes, this is a pretty good one. All elementals, all constructs get this tier 5 buff. It will make a lot of things more viable. For sure. The Earth Titan now also has Undying. So that should be pretty good. Because remember, he lost Undying from here. Now he gets it back to himself. So you summon the Earth Titan in battle, he'll get this buff and then also have Undying. So yeah. Okay. Tome of the Nature's Wrath. Horned God, Wild Eruption, that's where he summons all the plants to disrupt enemies. That was increased from range 4 to range 6. So that's a big one. This now allows you to lock down enemy units from running into your range units at a much longer range, giving you way more control over the battle. His Animate Flora was also changed from a single action to a free action. So every time he animates Flora, it doesn't use his entire turn. The Horned God is a way more powerful tier 5 unit now and should keep up with that power creep and go back to being built pretty frequently. Okay. I suspect the devs watched me, because what I would always do is once I get to the Goddess of Nature, that's a tier 5 nature tome, I would transform my units from Naga into plants, so then they could be affected by Force of Nature. The devs might have looked at that and then seen that that was a bit silly, so Naga also now can use Force of Nature. Yeah. Stormbringer was nerfed a little bit. The defense was nerfed from 5. Sorry, let me try that again. The defense was nerfed from 4 to 3. And throwing the Storm Trident was reduced from 12 lightning, 12 physical to 10 lightning, 10 physical. So once you get to the Force of Nature, if you're Naga Stormbringers, you will do about the same damage. But otherwise, Stormbringers got hit down a little bit. They were obviously quite good. Quite very good. Sad to see no more Pyro Templar nerfs. Pyro Templars really did need to be nerfed a bit harder. Yeah. Good to see Stormbringers nerfed a bit, but there needed to be a very, 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 very big nerf on Pyro Templars. Deathballing Pyro Templars are quite annoying for everyone. Reduce the amount of XP that tier 4 and tier 5 units need to level up. So, I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Heavy Charge Strike now gets 30% damage per hex moved instead of 20%. What is Heavy Charge? It's Giants. It's only Giants. So Giants got buffed. The devs specifically buffed Giants. Okay. Unit Passive Frenzy. Now gives 2 stacks of Strengthen when used with single shot attacks, but no longer stacks with itself. Now I'm wondering what that means. If I triple attack, will it stack 3 stacks of Frenzied? Well, Strengthened? Or do single shot attacks now get 2 Strengthened, but single shot or multi attacks only get 1 stack of Strengthened? And in particular, this seems to just giga nerf the Barbarian Archer for some reason. I'm not really sure what's going on with that one. I'd have to see it in game. I'm not really sure what's happening. Fiery Rebirth, that's from the Phoenix. Change from damaging all units at 1 hex radius to only damaging enemy units. Passive Reinforced, this is for constructs. Constructs now get 3 armor and resistance against physical ranged attacks. And the Warded, this is once again for constructs from the Tome of the Dreadnought, I think. Now grants +3 armor and +3 resistance against magic attacks. So, yeah, constructs are going to be a bit stronger against range because you're not going to be able to magic through them. In addition, right, you can see here, constructs also get 2 spirit resist. Now, constructs are going to be way more powerful. Reinforced will be more powerful, Warded will be more powerful, and Construct will be more powerful. I was looking forward to that because I really, really thought constructs were cool, but so catastrophically underpowered that they did not matter. But now they should be quite good. If you are not racial buff stacking, construct enchantment stacking will now also be a viable late game strategy. Spirit resist is quite rare and quite more powerful. And down here, they're rebalancing a bunch of units to have basically spirit damage and lightning damage were like the best damage types. And they're reworking things a bit so they're not just blatantly the best. But let's talk about this. Constructs giga buffed, huge buff to constructs. Ethereal no longer gets lightning resist, but now gets spirit weakness. This will make sense in a second here. Plants no longer get blight resist and get more lightning resist and get more healing. Now you might be wondering, wait, isn't that just a giant buff? Yes, it is a huge, huge buff to plants. No longer are they weak to blight, and they're stronger against lightning, and they get more healing received. Yeah, that's it. The plants are just way stronger. Plants were kind of hilariously underpowered, much like constructs. Now they are way more powerful. Hitting plants with lightning will be ineffective. Blight damage will no longer hit them harder, and they now just heal more. So you'll lightning hit plants a lot, and they'll just instantly heal it up, and you'll go, oh. Elementals no longer have poison and disease immunity, and undead no longer have bleeding immunity. But they've specifically changed it so all undead who are just bones have bleed immunity. Okay. Everybody get that? Okay. Poison and disease were a bit weird. Bleed was also a bit weird. Basically, this nerfs Whiteborn a little bit so they can be bleeded. Yeah. Basically, plants, huge buff. Constructs, huge buff. Ethereal changed a little bit. Now, there is something to be noted here. They don't mention it, but I did see it. Undead ethereals do not get 4 and then 4 spirit resist, or sorry, weakness for 8 spirit weakness. They now only get 4. So this does mean that ethereal undead lost their lightning weakness. It's not described here very well, but that's actually what's happening. You might think this is some huge nerf, but a lot of undead are also ethereal. Ethereal undead lost their lightning weakness. It's a bit weird, but just go with me. Okay. Let's see. Dread spiders. All spiders, they list them all individually, do they? Okay. All spiders got 5 HP, but no longer have blight resist. Web now also only hits enemies, making it way more powerful. And many of these spiders were changed from normal to fast movement. Spiders overall way buffed unless you're fighting blight, but even if you are fighting blight, that not hitting enemies and being not hitting allies and being way faster makes spiders way stronger. Okay. Spirit units, so stone spirit, magma spirit, storm spirit, tide spirit, all these units no longer have blight resist, but now have spirit resist. As I did mention, the developers seem to have noticed that blight damage was blight damage was resisted way too much. Spirit and lightning were not resisted enough, which made lightning and spirit damage blatantly the best, and it made blight damage not very good. It made poison, decay, blight builds, they would just fall off a cliff because there were so many things that just resisted it or immuned it or whatever. Anyway, spirit damage will no longer be blatantly the best damage type in the game. Okay, you guys see all that? Okay. Unit Butcher Ogre, Butcher Cut rework. Okay, I haven't seen that. Now deals 25 physical damage, no longer instantly kills the target, now has a chance to inflict 3 bleeding, 3 sundered defense when successful. Huh. Okay. Fire Giant, Stone Giant, and Storm Giant are now amphibious movement, so they can move freely on water. The Umbral Tyrant now summons a splittering until the end of combat and no longer for 3 turns. That's a big buff. Oh, here's a big one. Okay, all wyvern units are no longer a fighter but are skirmishers and get a new skirmishing ranged ability. This was likely changed because dragons and wyverns were like the same unit. They were both flying dragon melee fighters. So there's like literally no point to having both, and they kind of didn't have a role. So now, wyverns are now a skirmisher unit with a ranged attack. And this ranged attack should allow them, at the very least, to give dragon builds more ranged options and not just be a melee. I mean, dragons are still going to be a melee death ball, right? But at the very least, if like there's no more space for melee units to get in there, wyverns can now hit enemies at range, and because they're skirmishers, they can run around very quickly. Giant beetles and death beetles went from normal to fast movement, as well did the Gore-Tusk Matriarchs. A lot of units are now way quicker. A lot of enemy units are now way quicker. It's going to be more difficult. Yeah. Battle mages. This is a huge battle mage buff. I'm not going to go through all of them. Every single battle mage, once they get rank 4, now gets a specific upgrade to their special attack. So for example, let me just read through here these. White Witch. Once you get to rank 4, the freezing blast had its damage increased from 14 to 20, and the chance to freeze increased from 90 to 120%. Pyromancer, at rank 4, the flame strike ability goes from 16 damage to 20 with a 120% chance to burn instead of 90%. Magma Spirit, once it gets to rank 4, goes from 20 fire damage to 27. And then the chance to burn from 90% to guaranteed. Now this is for every single battle mage. Yeah. Transmuter, you guys might not have liked him losing the AoE stun, but he gains it back at rank 4. Yes, that's right. At Champion at rank 4, he gets a 60% chance to stun enemies. Quite powerful, that one. So all battle mages, if you rank them up, get significantly stronger at rank 4. You can read through these if you want. Big change. In addition to all the previous changes, battle mages should now be way stronger, way more powerful. Okay. Increase the time it takes for infestations to respawn patrolling stacks from 3 turns to 6. This should help you, especially if you have 2 infestations spawn next to a city, but you can't clear them yet. This should help you, so you're not just getting raided. Yeah. Magic material distribution, a slight change. Ore magic can now appear in Desolate. So Desolate starts can now get ore compared to everybody else. So there now can be ore found above ground. And liquid magic material can no longer appear in Temperate, Subtropical, and Desert, but now can appear in underground ice. So liquid magic can appear underground a little bit, and ore magic can appear above ground a little bit. Okay. Victory conditions got changed so that you don't always end up in expansion victory, I guess. The knowledge cost for Bind Ancient Wonder was reduced from 4,000 to 1,500, way more achievable. Age of Affinity was reduced in knowledge cost from 12,000 to 3,000. Wonders required victory was reduced from 40% to 33%, and if there's just no wonders on the map, then the minimum is reduced to 1. Okay, I believe that marks the end of the actual big changes. Are there at least things worth going through? Yes. Okay. So big change, big patch, big everything, huge changes. Big change to siege rework, feudal rework, huge update to battle mages, bunch of changes to cultures, huge update to unit traits. Plants should be way stronger now. Plant units from tomes should be way stronger now. Units, the magma spirit and such should be a bit stronger now. Going into poison, blight, decay damage should be way more possible now. It won't just be like immediately immune. Bleeding, I mean, undead no longer automatically immune bleeding, so that should be a little bit better as well. Tough and resistant being nerfed on units, so battles won't be as well. You won't be able to get as tanky as easily anymore. And a big push to Materium tomes to keep those more competitive with the other tomes, because Materium tomes are definitely falling behind. So big update, big patch. Make sure to play it, leave feedback, make sure everything. Oh, huge buff to constructs as well. Oh my god, the buff to constructs. And yeah, so this should all be good stuff. So thank you, everybody. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for reading all this with me. Thank you, everybody. And as always, have a great rest of your day.